Good morning, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Thank you for joining the show one more time. There was a swath of stories that happened yesterday, and honestly, it was a bit of a slow news day, if I'm being completely honest with you. But we got together 4 compelling stories that all kind of hit on different areas of what's going on around the country, but it is interesting nonetheless. First being which you've likely heard of already, is the fact Donald Trump was on Fox News with Laura Ingraham last night, and he's saying, I'd rather deal with the liberals. I'm kind of over the conservatives. I'm not really interested in them. Don't know Poilievre. Don't really care for him. He said nasty things about me. Don't really want to talk to him. And so that was the big headline. And then we'll start with that. But there are some big stories that are happening in following that we should address. One of which being Poilievre deciding to not allow media to be on his campaign plan as they go into election season here, which is a big move. It hasn't really been done. And I would say it's as I've been asking for, a bold move. We'll see how it works out for them. But first, let's talk about Trump's conversation and issues that he has with Poilievre and the Liberal Party here in Canada. Laura Ingraham was pushing on Trump because he's a little too harsh on Canada. He's like, shouldn't you be hard on our adversaries versus being harsh on our neighbor? And this was his response to that.
Much more. We have much more.
I don't think so.
Just so you understand, we subsidize Canada. And I like Canada. I love Canada. I love
but
Wayne
now
Gretzky.
the Liberal guys,
I love his wife.
The Liberal Party is going to win now in the next election, most likely. And they were down and out. Isn't that going to make them more hostile to us and possibly
I'd rather deal with a liberal than a
for
conservative.
China closer to Canada, and that would really put us in a bind.
The conservative that's running is stupidly no friend of mine. I don't know him, but he said negative things. So when he says negative things, I couldn't care less. I think it's easier to deal, actually, with a liberal. And maybe they're going to win, but I don't really care. It doesn't matter to me at all.
So your end game is what with them?
My end game is I don't want to have a big deficit. I don't want to see the United States of America, and you say 60 and I say 200, but it doesn't matter. I don't want us to pay 60 or $200 billion to a country that if they were a state, think of this, he would be our biggest, most beautiful, it would be great.
So there's Donald Trump there saying, I don't really care who I'm dealing with. I actually prefer to deal with the liberals versus dealing with Pierre Poilievre. Don't really care. And right now, conservative media is running with this, saying, well, this is clearly an endorsement of Mark Carney. And, you could take it that way. But the issue is the media will spin this the best way they can spin it to make it look positive for the liberals. And that being the fact that, see, Mark Carney, you can see it here. He can positively work with Donald Trump. Pierre Poilievre's a liability. You see how the goalposts shift? That's what you're going to be seeing in the media. I haven't read any headlines yet. I'll probably see them as we progress in the morning. But that is likely what the headlines are going to be from the CBCs of the world. This is a good thing. Donald Trump is greenlighting the liberals. This is the issue I have with the media in general. The way they spin things in a positive way, depending on who they are favoring. They could, very potentially, as the conservative media is doing, this is him endorsing the liberals. They're friends of Donald Trump. That's who they are. So are we going to treat them the same way as you've been slamming Poilievre for being connected to Trump? Are you? And that's a legitimate question. Are they? We know they won't. But I'm not here to play games of what's fair. I'm here to talk about reality. And the reality is, this is the BS in the media that you're going to have to deal with. And this is the spin they're going to give it. Well, see, the liberals and Mark Carney, they're the ones who should be working with him. He clearly respects them more than respect Poilievre. That will be the spin tomorrow. And we'll see how the reaction is. Because there's another part of this interview that came up about Canada, where he talks about how Canada's been a nasty country, and Trudeau's people have been nasty towards him, which again, will get picked up by the media. And you can imagine what they're going to say.
Any one of
You're tougher with Canada than you are with some of our biggest adversaries.
Only because it's meant to be our 51st state. And
but
but listen to this for a second.
We need their territory. They have territorial advantage. We're not going to let them get close to China.
Look,
right?
I deal with every country, indirectly or directly. One of the nastiest countries to deal with is Canada. The people now this was Trudeau, the people that good old Justin, I call him Governor Trudeau, his people were nasty, and they weren't telling the truth. They never told the truth. You know that.
There you go. They've been nasty. They've been nasty to deal with. And you know that clip's going to be picked up as well. That clip may be pushed more than the first clip. They'll push this at the start, then they'll follow up with that clip saying, oh, look, see, he clearly wants to deal with liberals more. That's a good thing for Mark Carney and the liberals. That will be the spin. It won't be the fact that, clearly Mark Carney is a friend of Trump. Both rich people, both go in the same circles. They won't play that. No. No, they'll continue to show the positive spin to this. And that's what you will see in the media throughout this morning. Guarantee it. And we've seen how the conservatives medias are spinning it, and we'll see what works and what propaganda works on the Canadian people. And people are smart enough to see through all of this. It'll be interesting. But next, Poilievre's campaign making some interesting moves. They said Poilievre won't invite media on campaign plane in coming election. Conservative leader Poilievre's team has decided that journalists will not be invited to travel on his campaign plane, marking a break from a long-standing practice. Historically, political parties charge media organizations a fee for a seat on the campaign plane, allowing them to cover all the leaders' events. The start date of the next election has not yet been announced, but is widely expected to begin within the next few days. Both the Liberal Party and the NDP have sent invitations to media organizations offering the traditional arrangements of places on the leader's campaign plane or buses for a fee to cover costs. Jenny Byrne, the Conservative Party's national campaign director, sent an update in media organizations Tuesday afternoon informing them there will be no media contingent on a Conservative bus or plane. They'll be welcome and encourage participation at all public events. Ms. Burns said in the memo that travel costs have risen at the same time as the capacity for digital and remote access to public events has improved. She has pointed out that in recent years, some national media outlets opted to cover campaigns from their closet bureau rather than participating in the leader's tour. We would like to assure you that this campaign will be one of the most accessible and transparent campaigns in recent memory. We have taken multiple steps to ensure that Canadian media will be able to share in public events, participate in events on the ground, and ask questions remotely and in person, she wrote. Ms. Burns said organizations will be given advance notice of event locations and full conferencing services, where an equitable balance at all press conferences between local and national media will be ensured. The campaign says it will also offer professional-grade video feed for broadcasters. So this is going to be the strategy for the Conservatives as they go into this next election, which we're expecting either to be announced today or Friday. We'll see. This could go one of two ways, right? So the traditional is the fact that we've been seeing the issues happening throughout the past couple of weeks, where media is flocking to liberals, flocking to anything that's left-leaning, and trying to highlight it. And anything Poilievre's been doing has not been covered. Media is not really giving him time of day. And so this is kind of one of those, like, I see what you're doing. You're trying to kind of stake your line in the sand of how you feel about the media. And obviously you're citing budgetary issues. But this media isn't really covering you. And when they do cover you, it's in the negative light. So I can see both ways. Would you rather be covered negatively, or would you like to be covered at all? That's the issue, and that's the thing that people are having. Where the strategy here is like, we'll go to our events, the media will be there, and they'll broadcast and talk about it. But the media has shown that they're going to favor the Liberals and give them the time of day over you. So do you want them on the plane, or do you not want them on the plane? It's kind of one of those, like, choose your poison, right? Either you have them there and they screw you over and spin stories while being on the plane, or they just don't cover you at all, and they only see you when you're showing up at campaign events. So we'll see what happens. It's a bit of an interesting strategy. Prof. Waddell said the downside for the media is that they may not know about all the leaders' events. He also said the Conservatives' plan would make it easier for the party to decide who asks questions. There's no question that if you do this, it gives the party doing it more control, he said. And that's kind of what we're seeing. They're going to get more control over their messaging, but they're also running the risk of not really being covered adequately. And thus, Mark Carney's name will be on everyone's lips. And the regular person's be like, I know Mark Carney. I've heard about him most recently. It's the recency bias that could have a huge impact in this election. And people are like, don't really know Poilievre. We'll see what happens. We'll see how the strategy pans out for them. But this is kind of the one thing I want to shout out, right? Here we have the Globe and Mail article headline, right? Poilievre won't invite media on campaign plane in coming election. We go to Ground News here. This is the headline we're working with. Just look at the spin with the other news outlets. National Observer, which is left-leaning, says media not welcome on Pierre Poilievre's campaign voyage. CBC, which is seen as left-leaning on Ground News, says Conservatives won't allow reporters to travel with Poilievre during upcoming election. Toronto Star, we know who's left-leaning. Pierre Poilievre won't let reporters travel with him in coming campaign, an election campaign, and so on and so forth. It's the same kind of thought and messaging. Whereas Globe and Mail says they're not invited, versus CBC says they're not allowed. They're both technically saying the same thing, but it's funny how one has a more negative connotation than the other. And it's just a thing that I'm kind of keeping an eye on, and we'll be using Ground News as we go throughout this campaign cycle, of how the media and different outlets who claim to be down the middle and words they use to communicate their stories and their ideas. Something to keep an eye out for. We saw yesterday that Mark Carney flew right from London over to Iqaluit to talk about border issues. Canada partners with Australia on radar system to detect threats from Russia and China. Canada's partnering with Australia for an early warning radar system to cover airspace from the US border to the Arctic, with the expectation that it'll be operational by 2029. The system, as the Canadian government has described it, would be used to detect incoming missiles and is being developed as Western militaries grapple with how to respond in advances to Russian and Chinese hypersonic missiles, which can change course in flight, as well as advanced cruise missiles with improved stealth capabilities. The system will cost $6 billion over 20 years to build and run, money that's already budgeted to modernize NORAD, the existing joint Canada-U.S. military command to protect and manage the skies over the two countries, which is a priority for the U.S. Mark Carney announced the Australian partnership Tuesday in Iqaluit after returning from his inaugural trip abroad to demonstrate the strength of Canada's sovereignty in the face of threats from U.S. President Donald Trump. One thing we need to keep in mind: two officials who briefed reporters traveling on Mr. Carney's flight from London to Iqaluit on Monday said talks to develop the system have been underway for over 2 years. Moves are being made and have been in the works 2 years prior to this. This is just Mark Carney taking credit for it. And this is, again, the issue that we're seeing here, right? He's up in Iqaluit saying, we're going to do this. And it's like, you're in caretaker mode, sir. You're just seeing it through. You're making an announcement. But he's going to take this as a win to people who are politically uninitiated. This, oh, yeah, look what Mark Carney's doing for the Arctic. He's not introducing anything new. He's just saying, oh, we're just going to continue on with what we've already been talking about over the past 2 years. So it's a political maneuver that people won't know if they don't read past the headline. But this talk of protecting our borders, this talk of protecting our infrastructure, I think is really important because this story came up. And honestly, I'm kind of happy that yesterday was a bit of a slow news day because we probably wouldn't have covered this and wouldn't have known about it if it hadn't been so slow. It says Bell says subsea cable from Cape Breton, Newfoundland was deliberately cut twice. Bell is looking for answers after its subsea fiber optic cable connecting Western Newfoundland to Nova Scotia was severed for the second time in the space of a year. Telecommunications cable was most recently cut on December 24th, said David Joyce, the company's networks director. That's almost a year after the first incident on January 4th, 2024. We found that it was cut by humans, Joyce said in an interview Wednesday, and that was really difficult about this because it's a huge investment, as we found that it was deliberately cut for the second time by humans. The cable stretches across the Cabot Strait between Dingwall in Nova Scotia and Codray in Newfoundland. When crews retrieved the ends of the 3-centimeter cable, they saw it was sliced clean, as if someone had used a specialized tool, he said. Joyce said it was possible an anchor got ensnared in the line, which lay roughly 30 meters below the surface, and it was cut to free a ship. If you find yourself in that situation, please don't cut the cable, he said. It's critical infrastructure for residents and customers of Newfoundland and Labrador. It is funny that has happened twice in the space of a year. Could it just be an accident, they said, with an anchor, something ain't caught? Potentially, but it's happening recently. And as we're seeing more attacks on our infrastructure, more attacks and encroachment on our border security that we've seen in the Arctic, people can ask the question, is there more nefarious things at play here? Are our enemies trying to mess with our infrastructure to see where our frailties lie? That is a question we all have. And a story we'll continue to keep an eye on. The fact that this thing's been sliced clean twice, well, considering how crazy geopolitics are right now, I think it's reasonable to wonder if this is coming from outside threats to our country. So we'll see what happens. But that's the news. That's the story of the day. Have yourselves a good one. I'm out.